She had the bolt cutters halfway through my lock when the siren bounced off the pines and rolled across the lake sparks, kissing the steel plate while spray hissed up from the spillway, and over the noise she yelled, "This dam belongs to the community." Like shouting could turn my deed into a suggestion. I kept my phone steady, red light blinking, and told her, "Touch that wheel again, and you can explain it to the judge." Then she froze, chin up like I was the one trespassing on her stage. That moment didn't start in chaos. It started 2 weeks earlier at 6:02 a.m. when my doorbell punched a hole in the quiet, and Pamela Whitaker pastel blazer and manila folder slid a paper across my threshold without a good morning administrative fine, $500, unauthorized structure impeding community water feature, and I just stared at it. Then at her sunglasses that were trying too hard to be important, and said, "Ma'am, my parcel isn't in your plat. It predates Maple Crest by decades." And she smiled the kind of smile people use when they're already drafting the next email. Communities share resources. Even the board expects cooperation. You understand, then she left. Like the conversation was a formality on the way to me giving up. I'm Evan Reed, the quiet neighbor who photographs bridges and mills for a living, the guy with the coffee ring on every notepad. And I inherited this sliver of land, shaped like a keyhole at the edge of Maple Crest Estates in Pine Hollow, North Carolina. A private spillway, a red valve wheel, a catwalk with a brass tag my grandfather screwed in himself that reads Reed Easement, Private. And if you crank that wheel wrong, you can slam the banks and flood the low yards, so yeah, it stays locked. By noon that same day, the email hit subject line draft, shared amenity access policy, all dressed up in neighborly words about weekend hours on my catwalk and open shoreline for families, and a yellow highlight around permanent easement, like a smiley sticker on a theft. And there was even a line about me retaining nominal ownership, which is what people say when they want everything, but your name on the mailbox. I wrote one reply, polite and plain, parcel, outside Maple Crest, plat book. Page 293, title policy attached bylaws. Do not extend here. Please cease all claims then. I scanned the deed and the survey and the brass tag, and sat at the table, trying to breathe my hands steady. The first trespass looked like a misunderstanding. A dad in cargo shorts and 2 teenagers wrestling a kayak over my fence, waving like it was a tailgate. "Hey, neighbor," Pamela said, "it's open now." And I pointed at the sign. Private maintenance easement, Reed family, and kept my voice low. "She doesn't own this gate. Please take the boat back." And they did, slow and offended. And I ordered weatherproof 4K cameras, the way other people order pizza. Because if this kept happening, I wanted dates, faces, angles. That night, Maya Brooks from 2 streets over DM'd me screenshots from the Facebook group, a big banner that said, "Sharing our water," over a pretty photo of the lake, shot carefully from public land to make it feel common. And under it, Pamela's comment. Our attorney confirmed community benefit rights. No attorney listed. No statute. Cited just confidence, packaged as law. And Maya wrote, "I've got you if it gets ugly," and I typed back, "Thank you," shaking just enough that it annoyed me. Wednesday at dawn, they came in reflective vests with clipboards like they were. "Doubt courtesy visit," Pamela said. Failure to comply will trigger daily fines, and I leaned in the door and said, "Show me the statute, or show me the attorney." And she smiled. Smaller. "You'll see it at the meeting," and walked away like she'd already won. 2 days later, the motion alert pinged 5:42 p.m. The lower gate, and on my screen, a bolt cutter snapped through the chain. The lock popped, and Pamela stepped onto my catwalk in a ball cap with those sunglasses and ran her fingers over the red wheel like she was blessing it. I was already moving through the Pines phone, rolling voice steady for the record of Pamela. Step off the catwalk right now. And she didn't. She lifted her chin to the handful of neighbors behind her and said, "This is a community water feature. The board approved limited access." And I held up my blue binder like a lighthouse. Deed title policy plat overlay. Show me your approval. And she glanced like truth was a draft she could ignore. So I called the non-emergency line, narrated time and location, lock-cut crowd present. And when Deputy Carla Nguyen rolled up calm as a level, she compared my papers to the plat. Blue parcel for me, red for HOA. No overlap. Then read Pamela's single page with community benefit, underlined 3 times, and nothing else, and said, "Folks, this is private property. You need to leave," and half the crowd melted. The other half hardened and glared, and Pamela hissed, "You'll regret this," loud enough for everyone. Then swept off like a parade that turned into a line of cars, trying not to make eye contact at the stop sign. After the dust and the quiet returned, I stood by the rail, watching the spillway spray, and felt a kind of tired. I don't usually admit the kind where your name gets dragged into rooms you never entered, and your stomach learns a new hobby called worry. I called County Water Resources, and Monday morning a guy named Daniel Hoyt walked the catwalk. Tested bolts, checked flow, scribbled in block letters. If someone opens this wrong, they shock the banks, potentially flood the low lots. This wheel requires training. And in his truck, he printed a field memo stamped, "Private structure, outside HOA authority," and I clipped it to the binder, scanned it twice, backed it up 3 places. Because if I was going to fight, I was going to fight like a photographer, every moment labeled and dated. Then came the stunt. I turned off the highway and saw the vinyl banner on my fence before I saw the cars Willow Run Family Day, Maple Crest HOA, kids on scooters, grills folding tables, dumped right beside my keep-off sign, and Pamela in the middle with a clipboard, and that tone like righteousness with earrings. And I parked, breathed, walked into the middle and said, "This is private property. Everybody off the catwalk now." And she said, "You refuse to share, so we're demonstrating the need." And I pulled the folded deed book. Page 293. "Show me anything that gives you authority here." And she swatted the air like facts were gnats. Laws evolve, Evan. You can't hide behind outdated ownership. And her husband leaned in close with a voice you use when you want to sound dangerous but don't want to say anything chargeable. Be careful, making enemies of the whole neighborhood isn't wise, and the ring around us tightened. Cameras up, you know what I mean, and I called dispatch again, and Deputy Nguyen did the same calm thing. Papers to hood names, parcel numbers. "Where is your attorney, Sam?" And Pamela said the name is back at my house, and the deputy said pack up now. And 15 minutes later, the banner drooped, and the grills folded, and people carried their indignation to their trunks. That night, I filled a hard drive with labeled folders called a property lawyer named Avery Dalton, and in his office, he barely blinked as he listed the violations. Trespass, harassment, interference with a regulated structure. And if that attorney's story is fabricated fraud, then he drafted a 10-page cease and desist with parcel ID, plat book title policy excerpts, links to video and screenshots. And while those letters crawled through the postal system, He pulled Maple Crest's bylaws from the clerk and read every page with me. And there was nothing. No clause for external parcels. No community benefit workarounds. Just landscaping and paint swatches. And he cold-called every firm in the county, and not a single one represented. Maple Crest, the supposed attorney, didn't exist. And there it was. The twist the moment you realize the bully's badge is cardboard. Yeah, that happened. And Avery said, "We could sue today, but let them see the truth first and correct it themselves. If they don't, we drop the hammer." I built a 10-minute slideshow like it was a gallery pitch. Deed scan, plat overlay with blue parcel and red HOA that never touch title policy exclusion. That says their bylaws stop at their line. Daniel's memo on county letterhead. Then the videos, the lock popping the crowd on my catwalk. Pamela's hand on the red wheel, and one last slide called consequences. Because subtlety isn't a universal language, then I practiced saying, "Verify it yourselves," without sounding smug. Because the point wasn't to win a clap, it was to anchor the room to something heavier than spin. Thursday night, the community center smelled like lemon cleaner and cheap coffee and nerves. Pamela cruised through landscaping and pool fobs, then softened her voice. A delicate community matter. And I raised my hand, asked for 10 minutes, got a smile. Thin enough to slice bread, and plugged in the laptop. I read the deed, showed the overlay, walked the title policy, held up Daniel's memo, then hit play and let the room hear the bolt cutters and see the lock arc into gravel and watch that red wheel under her fingertips. And when it ended, I said, "Verify it yourselves." And the silence had weight then. Pamela blurted, "He doctored that it's a setup. Edited to make me look guilty." And Avery stood and said, "We'll provide raw files and metadata to any independent examiner." And now the neighbors turned toward her. "You told us a lawyer approved this. Who name?" And another said, "You told me it was a community water feature, and already decided." And her eyes flicked left and right, like she was searching for a teleprompter that never showed up. The side door opened. Deputy Nguyen stepped in. Like a period at the end of a long sentence, and she said, "Ms. Whitaker, our office has received a criminal complaint regarding the cut lock and attempted interference with a regulated structure. Here is your citation. Further events will trigger charges." And the paper moved from the deputy's hand to Pamela's, like it weighed 100 pounds. A board member in a gray tie cleared his throat. Motion to remove Pamela. Whitaker as HOA president for cause effective, immediately. Second hands raised like a wave breaking all in favor, carried gavel down, and if you were outside that door, you could have felt the silence through the wall. That's where the story lives for me. Not in the cleanup, not in the apology texts later, but in that beat where volume met a boundary and lost where paper and video and a few steady people made the room true again. Now tell me where you draw the line between community and control. Share a request or a pry bar if a board says cooperation, but your lock gets cut. Are you wrong to say, "No"? Drop your take in the comments, argue with me. Tell me what you've seen. Tell me what the law should protect. And if you've stood in a room full of neighbors and had to hold your ground, I want to hear how it went. Because somewhere out there, another room is about to vote, and somebody needs to know they're not crazy for insisting that boundaries are real.